Hey, there we go. Hey, hi. Thanks for joining us tonight or this evening or whatever time you're watching this. My name is Oren Charis. I am the managing partner of the Global Health Impact Fund, and I'm very pleased to be here tonight to share with you a company that our fund has invested in and I think is going to be doing great things in the immediate future. A company called Sensifree. Sensifree and its CEO is Eran Agmon, and he's going to be giving us a pitch, and then we're going to have some questions and answers. We're not going to start just yet. We're going to give people a time to get together, but I think we'll probably last the whole thing a half hour, a little more if we have a lot of questions. Because we're doing this through new interfaces, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, you're able to leave comments in the chats, in the comment boxes, and they should come to me, and we can ask questions. So we're going to structure this with a pitch, which is pre-recorded, that Eran was kind enough to do for us to get it just right. And then once that's done, we'll go into a question and answer session where I will ask questions. And if you are kind enough to leave us questions in the comment box, I will try to get to every single one of them. For those of you who want more information, if you leave us your contact information, we can try and reach out to you afterwards. We'll also be sending an email out tomorrow to follow up with everyone who was able to join. So thank you for joining us. We'll just give it 1 or 2 more minutes, I think, before we get started. In the meantime, I'll tell you about the Global Health Impact Fund. So lots of stuff is happening there. We are about to close our first fund. We've got 10 great investments, including Sensifree, in that portfolio. We do have room for more investors if you're accredited, so you're welcome to reach out to me. It's just been fun. We have a great doctors network called the Global Health Impact Network, which is aligned with the fund, but also does a lot of its own endeavors. And that's a network of collaboration and innovation and education. So we create communities around things that physicians care about, and we would love to have you join that too. It's a private community, it's encrypted, and we don't monetize your clicks with ads, like Facebook does. So no offense, Facebook. And let's see, what else can I tell you? Our fund is really excited. We're going to be launching our second fund. So that's been pretty cool. And hopefully we'll have some great stories to tell from that fund. In our first fund, we have some cool companies, and that's going to bring me into Sensifree. So Sensifree is a company that really excites us. My background, as many of you know, is that I've been an anesthesiologist for 25 years. I'm now retired and full-time on the fund. But as an anesthesiologist, I spent many, many hours in the operating room taking care of patients. And one of the things that I had to spend a lot of time doing was monitoring their blood pressure. And we do that non-invasively with a cuff, and we can do that invasively with an arterial line, as most of you know, is a catheter placed into the artery to measure the blood pressure beat to beat. Well, it's been a holy grail for many of us to find a way to measure the blood pressure beat to beat non-invasively. That would be something spectacular. And putting an arterial catheter in somebody is not without complication. It takes time. And there are times when you want to use one and you don't. There are also times when you don't think you need one, and you probably did with the benefit of hindsight. Intraoperative, postoperative, preoperative hypotension is not an uncommon thing. And hospital-based mortality within 30 or mortality 30 days after a surgery definitely happens, and it's definitely linked, at least in many cases, to hypotension, often undiagnosed. So if we can measure this, if we can monitor that in patients just across the board, that would be really, really powerful and probably change a lot of outcomes for people. So I'm very excited about this company. I'm very excited to share the presentation with you today. It's 5:35, so I think we'll go ahead and get started with the pitch. So the plan is we're going to do the pre-recorded pitch, follow with a live Q&A. So please leave me questions in the comment box on your platform. And after that, we'll sign off for the night. So thank you, and let's roll the pitch.
Welcome, everybody, and good evening. My name is Eran Agmon. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sensifree. Thank you so much for joining to this broadcast and taking the time to listen to our exciting story. Sensifree, as a medical device company, was simple yet daring vision. we would like to change the way blood pressure is monitored in hospitals. In fact, our vision goes beyond that, and I'll talk about it later. When patients having a major surgery reach the post-anesthesia care unit, families naturally assume that their loved one has survived the most dangerous part of the ordeal. Their assumption is wrong. Mortality in the 30 days after surgery is 1,000 times higher than intraoperative mortality. In fact, if the months after surgery was considered a disease, it would be the third leading cause of death in the USA. Most of this mortality occurs during the initial hospitalization period under direct medical care and in the best facilities. Several large studies have shown strong association between episodes of low blood pressure during surgery and 30 days post-operative mortality. Other studies have shown that continuous blood pressure monitoring detects twice as much such episodes. Add to this the fact that continuous blood pressure monitoring is done today in only about 15% of the cases, and we've got a real unmet clinical need. At Sensifree, we developed a device that provides continuous non-invasive blood pressure monitoring for use in the operating room, PACU, and ICU. These hospital units are the low-hanging fruit in terms of sales potential. Clinicians in these units are fully aware of the need and are highly receptive to use such solutions in their practice. Now, this is really important because we do not have to educate clinicians why our device is needed. In fact, it is quite the opposite. The usual response to my product presentation is, bring it on. When can we start using it? We estimate the total addressable annual market in the US and Europe in $1.9 billion. Now, this is a very significant opportunity. And we build this estimate bottom up based on number of operating room, number of surgical procedure, ICU beds and stays, and so forth. So are we the only smart guys around who notice this huge untapped market opportunity? The answer is no. But cuffless blood pressure monitoring is a hard problem to solve, and solving it properly is even harder. Over the years, several solutions have been developed and proposed. They were all either too expensive, too complex to use, or not at all suitable for hospital environments, and often they were all of the above. I'll give you one example. We're working closely with a large medical device company who is really interested in our solution. Now, this company has a product that provides continuous non-invasive blood pressure. It costs $25,000. Not only this, it uses disposable sensors that cost $235 each. And this company admitted to me that they cannot lower the price of the sensor because of the complexity of their technology. And I spoke with enough customers to know and understand that it cannot fly at this price level. And that company knows it too. The way to do it right is by using 21st century technology. Use smart software algorithms instead of clunky, expensive hardware. And we worked with a number of senior clinicians who are passionate about solving this problem, just like we are, to understand what is needed and how to fit it into the clinical practice. We made price and ease of use main design objective. We use super smart software algorithms and very low-cost sensors. Now, software costs nothing to make and allow flexibility for adding new features and improving performance in the future. The way the product works is by analyzing the signal from a fingertip PPG sensor. This is the same type of sensor used for pulse oximetry. Our device works alongside existing bedside monitors and provides continuous reading on its own display. In future model, we will add measurement of additional hemodynamic parameters on top of blood pressure. We completed development and clinical validation of the product. For a product like this, validation means to confirm that a blood pressure measurement is accurate. And we did that in clinical studies in both ICU and OR patients. And the results that we're getting are better than the requirements of the international standard for blood pressure monitoring devices. It's called the ISO 81060-2. Now, this is the standard that the regulatory authorities like the FDA would look at to evaluate our device. We're going to submit a device for regulatory clearance within a few weeks, both in the US to the FDA and as well in Europe as well. This is, of course, a mandatory step before we can sell the device. With the FDA, it's going to be a 510K submission, and we expect approval in 6 to 9 months. The essence of the FDA approval process is to review our clinical data and confirm that the results we obtained meet the requirements of the ISO standard that I've just mentioned. In Europe, we've already started the process. We received an ISO 13485 and MDR certification. These are the two first steps in the EU regulatory process. These two clearances, US and Europe, will open up two very large markets for us, representing about 2/3 of the global market. There are many additional markets who would rely on these approvals without the need for a full regulatory submittal. Once we receive the first regulatory clearance, we can start selling the product. Towards that, we are building a cooperation project with the Department of Outcomes Research at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. For those of you who are not familiar with the Outcomes Research Department, this is the world's largest clinical anesthesia research organization. Its director, Professor Dan Sessler, is on our advisory board. Professor Sessler has a personal interest in continuous vital signs monitoring and in blood pressure in particular. The objective of this cooperation is to run a pivotal study by the Cleveland Clinic team, publish a paper, and disseminate the results to the clinical community. By doing this, we will have an independent validation from a highly respected key opinion leader, which is a clinical part in our go-to-market plan. For selling the product beyond initial sales, we plan to partner with sales channels. We're in discussions with several candidates in the US, Edwards Lifesciences, GE Healthcare, and Telflex. All of them clearly indicated their interest in our solution, and we're simply waiting for the regulatory approval to move these discussions forward. Now, going back to our vision, all this is just the beginning. The opportunities and applications to our technologies are vast. They're ranging from the hospital to outpatients to remote patient monitoring at home. Just think about the possibility to monitor blood pressure in a pregnant woman, in patients with acute kidney disease, complex chronic patients, and of course, monitoring and management of hypertensive people. The immediate extension would naturally be in surgical wards. Most post-operative death and complications are a consequence of major bleeding or cardiovascular complications. It has been shown that in the general wards, post-operative hypotension and hypertension are common, prolonged, profound, and most importantly, by and large, undetected by the routine 4 to 6 hours of vital sign assessments. More frequent monitoring of a set of hemodynamic parameters will provide a valuable early warning for patient deterioration. To summarize, Sensifree has developed and clinically validated a low-cost, continuous, cuffless blood pressure monitor for hospital use. We will soon send it for regulatory approval in both the US and Europe, expecting clearance within 6 to 9 months. We will launch the product to the market shortly after that. And I'd like to end up this presentation by sharing with you what drives my team and me personally. We all strongly believe that our technology can make a difference. It can improve patient safety, save lives, and make the work of clinicians easier. Join us to make healthcare better.
Bravo. That was a really good, thorough, and well narrated pitch. Thank you, Eran, for doing that for us. Now I'd like to invite you, the live Eran, to the stage to join us for some Q&A. Hey there. I was worried I couldn't quite read it, but I hope there's no intellectual, secrets on that whiteboard of yours that you're giving away. Should be subliminal things.
No, it's okay.
And let me remind you, if you're viewing this live, that we would love to see questions from you. Otherwise, you're just going to hear me and Eran talking, and who knows where that will go. But we'll definitely get it started. So one thing I didn't notice, and I think I understand why, but maybe explain a little bit. You don't have a direct consumer product in the mix here, like not in your initial plan. Is that an area that you're interested in exploring as a company, or do you really want to stay strictly clinical?
We're definitely not precluding it as a product or as a direction. We actually looked at direct to consumer offering in the very beginning of our journey, and we decided to shy away from it because we realized that there is a complexity in the business model of it. So just assume that I would sell to you, Eran. Well, you are not because you're a doctor, but to the average person, a device that can measure his blood pressure, and he will use it and perhaps notice that his blood pressure is high. And then what he will do with this information, he cannot diagnose himself.
Sure.
He cannot prescribe himself a medication. So he needs to take it to his doctor. And his doctor would say, I don't know what this device is. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. Let's go and do something more traditional about diagnosing you. So what I'm trying to describe here is that you need a full ecosystem where the doctor is a part of the loop, and it's reimbursable in this way or another, because otherwise people will have to buy the device out of pocket. Yeah. And we know this is always an issue, and it will never be a cheap device. It's not going to be $30.
Right.
It's going to be a couple of $100s, and that's going to shrink, I think, the market very significantly. So there is a true complexity here to bring something like this to the market, and we don't know how to do it simply. I mean, this is something that's going to take time and money.
So that's really interesting, Eran. We talked a little bit before this started tonight, and one of the things we were discussing was your decision, which is an expensive decision, to create a clinical grade product, and that is very different than most of the competitors in this space. Can you spend a moment talking about why you did that? And now that you're at the other end of that journey, whether or not you look back and you think it was a good choice or a bad choice?
So there are two parts to this. So first of all, it was, we looked around and asked ourselves, who's going to use a technology like this? And we stumbled into the community of anesthesiologists and surgeons. And through discussions with people from this community, we realized that there is a real deficiency, as you mentioned in the beginning. That is, there's no good answer for it. Now, when you talk to professionals, it's easy to explain the value of what you're doing. And as I said in my recorded speech, this is a community of people who are willing to adopt a solution like this tomorrow morning. And as a startup company, and being appeal to investors like yourself, you also would like to see beyond the clinical solution. You would like to see a company that can grow and can generate return on the investment. And for us, there was a very good match between what we have and what the market would like to have and to accept. So indeed, from a technology, clinical, and regulatory perspective, this is a high bar to clear. But as far as the market is concerned, this is a low-hanging fruit. There is a very receptive market to this. And, using our device is very, easy and part of standard clinical procedures. There's nothing special that clinicians need to do in order to use our device.
Interesting. And so now, so you're through this. I mean, you're submitting to the FDA. You've done the work. You've cleared the bar. You've gotten your ISO validation. So this isn't a challenge today for Sensifree, but do you regret making that choice instead of creating some direct consumer device?
First of all, no, I'm not regretting. I think I'm the more we walk the path that we decided on, I realized it was a good decision and a proper decision, especially for a company like ours. I think that going in the path for direct to consumer, this is not something that a company like ours with the available funding for medical devices could have done. I think it much better fits what we good at, and the proof is in the pudding. We, as you said, we're at the end of the road in that sense with a product that is clinically validated, ready for regulatory clearance, and this is the next step.
Well, and I mean, just selfishly as an anesthesiologist, I'm thrilled because I think this is a huge, huge deal. And if the accuracy weren't validated, doctors, the Hippocratic Oath is not, taken lightly. Like, first, do no harm. I don't want to use a device that I can't be certain will give me good information to act on. So without that level of validation, I don't know that I would adopt it. Certainly I couldn't because it wouldn't be FDA cleared. But even at home, what good would it do? We have a great question from Doug Sumaraga, who asks about remote patient monitoring, RPM, for chronic care. And he wondered if there's a role for Sensifree in the home care situation. Now, you know that the population is aging, and thank you, boomers, and we need to do something with people. And nursing homes, that's certainly a solution for some, but a lot of people would like to stay home longer if that's possible. And I'm sure there will be, both constituencies. So if somebody wanted to keep their aging parent or a relative at home, something like this might be very helpful. Is it something you envision could be used in the home in a more of a healthcare setting with, supervision?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it will require somewhat different design of the product, but the technology itself is certainly suitable for this. We need to think about, is the patient ambulatory or is he, in bed at home? We need to think about things like that. What are the requirements? But yes, by all means. And even before that, we would like to expand into the surgical world, and this is a very similar solution. So we are certainly walking through this path as our next challenge.
And let's go back and talk about the tech for a moment. So a pulse oximeter is giving us really two data points, right? It's giving us the oxygen saturation, which it measures by transmitting light through the finger and looking at hemoglobin, deoxyhemoglobin. But you're also looking at the photoplethysmography. Did I say that right? Because it's a tongue twister.
You can say PPG. It's
PPG, and that's the pulse wave that we also see, which we correlate, obviously, with a pulse oximeter. And it's the PPG that you're measuring to get your data. So Maj asks a question about ambulatory monitoring, but also, quite frankly, as we discussed in the operating room, you can't guarantee a patient that's motionless all the time. I mean, sometimes under general anesthesia, but you might do sedation or other types of anesthetics where the patient is not fully unconscious and paralyzed. So why PPG as a baseline for gathering your data instead of, say, sonography or laser, or some of the other areas people are trying to innovate, blood pressure? And more importantly, does your solution work when there's movement, or does it create a lot of artifact that interferes?
So these are actually two separate questions.
Okay.
The core of our product is a software algorithm that analyzes a waveform that, in our case, comes from a PPG sensor, a fingertip PPG sensor, and this waveform is a good proxy for the arterial pressure wave. we know that. I mean, everybody knows. Well, everybody in this community knows that. Now, you can generate a similar waveform by using different sensors. You can use ultrasound for this. You may use some other types of light sources. You can use RF. You can use some haptic sensors. There are different ways to generate a similar waveform. What we're interested in is the morphology, the wave shape, because the waveform itself is not a pressure wave. It does not measure. I mean, the PPG sensor just show you a signal, but it has no pressure unit to it. So in that sense, the use of PPG is we chose PPG because the sensor is very low cost, it's very safe, and it's very common. I mean, we started with an RF sensor, and we could see the kind of I won't say resistance, but question mark from clinicians, like what exactly this sensor is, how does it work? When you use a PPG sensor, everybody knows what. I mean, every doctor knows what it is, and there are no questions about it. They know how the waveform look like, etc. Now, regarding the question about motion, so I did not come through any sensor that is not sensitive to any type of motion. Even arterial lines are sensitive to motion, and it's got to do with the fact that the transducer of the arterial line is a piezoelectric transducer, which translates mechanical pressure into an electrical signal. So if you bump into one of the tubes of the arterial line setup, you send a shock wave down the tube, and you see those artifacts on the arterial line. So in that sense, if motion is excessive and artifacts resulting from it are too large to even read a proper waveform, we will not provide a reading. Even a cuff is sensitive to motion. So all these measurements have certain sensitivity to motion, but usually those interruptions are momentarily.
Okay, great. And how does the device, the Sensifree device, work in the operating room with other monitors and devices? Do you need to get hardware? Do you need to buy software? Is it a solution where we have to get new probes for everybody? What's happening with respect to that?
So there are two basic models for it. One is our small monitor, which is like, think about an iPad mini or something like that, directly interfaces with the bedside monitor. Think about a GE or Philips monitor, from which we read directly information like the PPG waveform. But this is not always possible. There are monitors that do not allow to do that, or do not have a proper interface or interface that provide the data at the quality that we need. So we do have an option to use our own hardware, our own fingertip sensor, in which we sell a very low-cost disposable sensor. Once you've finished with the operation, throw it in the trash can, and it's at a price that is totally affordable. I mentioned, that we work with a large a medical device company that has a product in the market. Their sensor is $250. Now, this is so expensive that it's almost as expensive as an arterial line. So it doesn't make it.
Sure. Let's talk about Sensifree the business for a moment. So you're submitting now to the FDA. When is that going in, or has it gone in? Where are we with that?
It's going to be next month.
Next month. So we're going in next month, and you've already initiated your talks with the CE groups. So for your European CE mark. So we wait for that to happen, and then like how do you restructure the team? What kind of people do you have to bring on board? How does this commercialize?
That's a good question. So we are going to make the first sales up, by ourselves. We have a fairly long list of, medical centers that we're in touch with that would really like to start experiencing with this device, with this technology. The there's really a healthy appetite for this. But there are about 6,000 hospitals in the U.S. We cannot cover that. We cannot support the amount of customers. So our go-to-market plan goes through a partnership with a sales channel, and we are already in discussion with a couple of them. And these are going to be different partners in different geographies. There's a lot of localization to selling of medical devices. It's got to do with language, with regulation, with local support. There are local people who know the market better than somebody from a different country or from a different geographical region. So this is the path that we're going to pursue for a larger sales effort.
Right. Well, that makes sense. And I'll just take a moment to say, if you have any more questions, we're going to start winding things down if I don't have more questions, but we'd love to see some more questions from the audience. Eran, I wouldn't be a venture capitalist if I didn't ask you about your exit strategy. Why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
So, yeah, it's a valid question and almost a natural one. The most likely exit path for a company like ours is by acquisition. And companies in our field of medical devices can be acquired anywhere from, once they've got their regulatory clearance, initial sales, so showing some market traction, and the price is going up. The more value and assets the company accumulate, the price will go up. What's the right time to sell? We have a board for this. You'll be part of it, or you're sitting on our board, and we'll discuss it when the opportunity will come. But we're looking at an exit. The window for exit is going to open fairly soon, in less than 1 year. So it's going to be interesting. The next couple of years are going to be really interesting.
Everything is slow, then all at once. That's what they say.
Yeah, exactly. We've been walking in the desert for a long time, and we see the water.
So, Eran, I'm going to wrap it up, I think, with us. This has been really interesting. My one last question for you is for the entrepreneurs, the founders out there. What's like one good piece of advice that you could give them?
I'm looking back, and as a company, we've been near death a couple of times. If you really believe in what you're doing, never give up. Try to stay alive. Try to keep the lights on in the house. Go after grants. It's really good source of financing. It's non-dilutive. It opens up all kinds of opportunities. Just keep talking to people. Just keep it alive, and leave the door open for the opportunity to knock on your door. That's the best advice I can give you. It served well for me. More than once. And looking back, I think if there's one thing that I can look back and say, okay, this is one good thing that I've done, you just keep going. Never let it go. Again, if you believe in what you're doing, and we truly believe in what we're doing. So, yeah.
Good. Well, we believe in what you're doing, too. And thank you for doing this. This is going to be an amazing innovation that we hope will fulfill its potential. So thank you, Eran. Thanks for doing this tonight. If you'd like to learn more about Sensifree, you can reach out to me, Orin, ORRIN, at globalhealthimpactfund.com. You can also reach me through LinkedIn. I'm not on Facebook, but I believe the Global Health Impact Fund is. But send us a message, send us a note. We'd love to get you more information and teach you about what we're doing and get you on board the team. So thank you. Eran, thank you very much. Thank you to the team, and I hope everybody has a good night. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks, everybody, who participated.